Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 661. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the master of speculation, the duke of the sultan of strategery, the bridge defying, is upset that he does not get the first, second, and third prize of the contest, even though he submitted the most entries, because he is, of course, the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to talk about Superman Warworld Apocalypse, the special, and we're going to talk about Superman the Son of Kal, issue number 14, and an in-depth look at the Superman comics. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what's going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, remember with DC Comics, DCBS, it's not just about, really great deals on comic books, and they do have that. They've got different apparel, they've got action figures, statues, and whatnot, some really cool deals. Right now I'm looking at this neat Batman Beyond Red Batarang prop replica, 20% off, only $25.59, so check them out. They've got some great deals on everything, within the geek environment. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they always have some really cool deals of the week. They have the Batman 89 hardcover, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. This was spectacular. I really enjoyed this. The Brightest Day Omnibus hardcover, 2022 edition, $100 regularly, 50% off, only $50. If you are a fan of the Harley Quinn animated series, they have the Harley Quinn animated series Volume 1, the Eat, Bang, Kill Tour, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. And they have the Joker hardcover Volume 2, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Back to the beginning of our episode when I was talking about the spoiler warning contest. Well, we didn't get any entries. And it's funny, sometimes over the years we've had some contests where we've gotten tons of entries. We've had others where we thought, this would be something people would be really excited about, and it was a bust. This was a bust. So what we're going to do is we're going to, next week, launch and announce a new contest, because I want to give stuff away. So we're going to try something a little different and a little more accessible that gives people a chance to enter based on their own preferences. But I really do want to give away some trades and hardcovers and things. It's really more of a thank you to people for listening to the show. If you have some ideas on contests you'd like to see on the podcast, shoot them our way, because that would be something that I'd love that to be listener driven. The idea behind this is to make this fun, and we would like to give away some prizes on the show, and it's really a thank you to everybody who listens, and it's an opportunity to participate. So that's really what we're looking for out of this. Anyway, Jim, as we're talking about that, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you're in the books, you may want to come back later so you can better meow the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
All right, Jim, let's chat about some DC news. I'm actually looking over at the Facebook group. There was an article put out by NPR about DC Comics reducing Latinos to their food in the Hispanic Heritage Month covers. And I gotta say, it's hard to argue with the criticism. You take a look at the fact that each cover has some form of food-based theme. I'm like, who didn't catch that? They've been really good about putting out these themed covers and anthologies and things like that, to kind of embrace the fact that they have a diverse lineup of characters, which I applaud them for. I think it's something that has led to interesting stories and interesting product from them. This seems like a swing and a miss. I just don't know how you make this mistake.
Well, it's funny. I probably wouldn't have noticed it if someone hadn't pointed it out.
In fairness to you,
it's just I wouldn't have seen it or identified it, but one, I completely agree with what they're saying. But here's the interesting point: Jamal Igle made a post on his Facebook about this, and it actually completely rang true. And I'm like, yeah. He said if we had Jon Stewart eating fried chicken and watermelon on the cover on the Juneteenth cover, we would have all been outraged by it. That would have been like, oh my god. And I'm like, yeah, I would have noticed that. I would have been like, dude, this is wrong.
Right.
So again, it's one of those things where I was like, I completely see what they're saying. Now, Jared posted an update that Jorge Molina released on Twitter, that the cover for Kyle Rayner was just one version considered, and the final cover has some more of an original mural kind of design as opposed to the Tamale cover. So,
these aren't the actual covers.
No. And again, Jared just posted it on our group I'm not sure how long ago, but so I guess these aren't the final covers.
No, I would definitely go back and rethink some of this.
Definitely change that. Yes.
Yeah, I get your point as far as saying, you may not have caught it, because I don't know that I would have either. But here's the thing. If you're sensitive, like, the whole point of this is to embrace culture, right? So if in doing that you're insulting culture, you have to fix that. I'm actually encouraged by what you're saying. Apparently there's an opportunity, well, I'm hoping there's an opportunity to course correct some of this, and because the idea is great. The concept of embracing, DC has a really cool lineup of characters. So, that's a win. It's just, wow.
Yeah.
Truthfully, to your point, I think when you see them all together, that's when you realize, oh, geez, that was a swing and a miss. I am glad that it looks like there's some other concepts out there that hopefully they can put in place instead and get this right.
Yes, agree.
I hope it's not too late for that.
And it's funny. I never knew Kyle's ethnicity. I had no idea that he was Hispanic.
Yeah, which is a cool thing. As far as that's kind of the neat part about embracing some of this, is you get to know some more about the characters that you didn't know before. So I think that's cool. This is cool. The Secret Society of Supervillains has showed up on the DC app, and I actually love when friends of the show start posting about comics that they're reading, because then it started this whole little thread about why you should be reading that storyline. And I think I'd like to see more of that. I think that's great when you get recommendations like that. Have you ever read that?
No, I haven't, but I'll be honest with you, I will be.
It's really good. So, it's worth checking out. And that's the nice part about the app, is there's an opportunity to catch out some new things that you may not have gotten before. To the point of, you and I have had discussions about this before, about how things like the app are leading to purchases of things that you want to own now because of the fact that you got to enjoy it for free through the app. Well, not for free, through your monthly subscription with the app, I should say. But
I consider it for free.
Yes.
I'll be honest with you. Dude, I look at it as I'm getting to appreciate this for free. And even though I am paying for it, but it is something out there. And it's one of the things that I like about having this. Mm-hmm. For your point of, it's for me, it's gone beyond just read before buying, to give me an idea of something I want to own. Again, stuff like this, I will completely explore with Secret Society of Supervillains. Didn't know it was around. I read older stuff. I'm right now actually starting to contemplate going back and reading some Kyle Rayner, because I really did not read him when he was the sole Green Lantern, when he was Torchbearer? Yeah, Torchbearer, or right, Ion, whatever he was called. I can't remember right now.
You didn't. Did you read him back when he was Green Lantern?
No.
Forget the other names that you're talking about. You got to go, when you go back to the beginning, it was Green Lantern. It was Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern. After the whole Parallax thing, well, I shouldn't say after, during the whole Parallax thing, because Parallax happened and then Kyle happened.
Yeah, I know the basic stories behind it, to be honest with you, because, again, I wasn't really reading DC, but my buddy Joe was, in BG, and he was telling me some of the stuff going on with Parallax and all that stuff. So all the Parallax knowledge I have really is kind of secondhand, and or I've gone back and reread some stuff. But I've never really sat down and read Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern until the modern stories. Until the core was, because I went back and I read when the core was Rebirth, not the Rebirth, but I can't think of what they called it. That one series where the core actually came back, and it was Recharge, or I can't think of what they called it. But they had that series about the core coming back, and then it was just I went back and I reread that kind of stuff. So I've seen the modern era of Kyle Rayner reading, but not the original stuff.
That whole era, Ron Mars was the writer during that time, and I think Darryl Banks did the artwork, if I remember correctly. It was a good-looking series, and it was really well written. I was a Hal guy walking in, so you're taking a guy who's a Hal guy, and they did what they did with Hal with Parallax, which is a gripping story. I would actually, if you didn't read the Parallax story leading up to the new Green Lantern, I would recommend reading the Parallax story and then reading Kyle. Just because reading that story leads to this really cool build, and then you're like, well, what comes next?
Yeah.
And it was a good way to read. Did you ever read Parallax? Did you read that story itself?
I've read bits and pieces of it. I actually saw the very ending of Parallax when he flies into the sun and recharges it and all that stuff. That I actually did read that. But again, it was one of those things where I was like,
well, you're talking about Final Night, right?
Yeah, Final Night. I read that.
Yeah.
But the whole birth of Parallax, everything that existed, no.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend reading that, because Final Night led to then a very cool I mean, we're jumping all over the place with this. I would go back to the Green Lantern issues where Parallax happened, then read right into Kyle, because there's a few issues of Green Lantern that leads into the birth of Parallax, and then just read Kyle's run. It's at least the initial kickoff of Kyle's run. I'm not saying that you shouldn't read more of it, but it's a really cool opening. One of the things I liked the most about Kyle's run in the beginning was I love those stories that make it feel like it's possible for you to be Green Lantern, or you to be Batman, or you to be Robin, or you to be those stories that kind of get you. Duke did that when he became Batman's sidekick. It was this idea that, you in certain circumstances, I could be his sidekick. I could, I could be Green Lantern. I could be. That's what Kyle was. Kyle was really accessible. He felt very current and contemporary at the time, and not that he does it now, but I mean, just at the time, it was fresh what they were doing with him. And he was very likable, and it was a different sort of character to. Really, it was bold, because what they were doing is putting a new Green Lantern in place at a time where we got a new Green Arrow as well. So they were trying at DC during that time to build some legacy characters, and I enjoyed them. I enjoyed that era. There is that part of me that geeks out when characters return. When you eventually get Hal back, and you get the core back, and all everything that makes up the Green Lanterns. But they gave him a good long run as the Green Lantern. And they did the same thing with Green Arrow and at that time. So it's their run's well worth seeking out just to see what they were doing during that time. And it is kind of a snapshot into an era. So yeah, I definitely would recommend that. If you'd read it, let us know. And let us know your thoughts on it, because I think it'd be great to see it from your perspective now, because I read it at the time when it was coming out, and I think it's different looking back and reading something from the 90s, which it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it is. So it'd be interesting to see. And for a lot of people, he was their Green Lantern because of the fact that they jumped on with him. So I get it. It's kind of like the Flash debate, right? As far as who's your Flash, the Green Lantern debate, you can certainly get into. And Kyle made his mark, so he's a cool character. Harley Quinn's renewed for season 4, which we knew already, but there's going to be a new showrunner. I'm just glad to see that this series is continuing and that we're getting something, as Jared pointed out, something official with this. Jared's actually He's making an interesting point about Gotham Knights. So he's showing the Gotham Knights preview from IGN. He's talking about the fact that they've only watched footage and they haven't gotten any hands-on time with the game. I'm with him. I want to see somebody who's played it now. We're getting close to the release of Gotham Knights, and I haven't heard anything about people playing it. It sure looks really, really good. So I'm with him. I'm keeping my hopes up for it. And I think gameplay to me is always the thing that draws me through. Like, I love when a game looks beautiful. I love when a game on paper does that. Superhero games in general lately have been really, really strong on the gameplay mechanics. So I'm really keeping my fingers crossed on this one, because I think they'd be delaying it if it was a poor game. I would hope they'd be delaying it if it was a poor game at this point. But it sure looks good. Hear me out. Batman again. I like the New Yorkers got that in his humor, and I would go see this. I agree. Stargirl, where are you at on Stargirl? I'm caught up on Stargirl. I'm
behind.
Yeah, I have not watched.
Big time behind.
I have not watched season 3 yet, but I'm going to. I love that show. So when you're behind on a show like this, do you have to like get caught up before you would watch the new season, or what do you do? How do you approach this?
It actually depends on the show and how far behind I am. Like with Stargirl, I'm still in season 2.
Okay.
So I only have one season to go, so I probably would say I'm just going to watch season 2, and then I'll watch the premiere afterwards. If with the Flash, I'm so far behind, I'll probably just jump to the current season and watch it just to watch the end of the Flash, and just see the end of the Flash that way. But if I'm close enough, I like to be caught up. Do a nice little binge watching.
Leapfrogged a question that I should have asked from the get-go. Is Stargirl a show you want to get caught up on?
Yes, 100% want to get caught up on. It's one of those things that I really, really like this show. Okay. It's one of those things I don't have a lot of free time to actually watch. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things every time I watch, I'm like, man, this is an awesome show. This is a great show. And again, I'm very happy that it's still around, that it survived, and it's survived for another premiere. So, because I was worried, again, Stargirl was one of those ones I was worried about because, they were cutting shows. Yeah. Shows were getting canceled. I was worried about Stargirl, but I'm glad that they didn't cut it. I'm glad it's going through. We got at least one more season of it. Hopefully, people will continue watching this thing, and we can keep going through, and maybe we can get a season 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. Because, again, I am greedy. I don't just want one. I want it all. So, but no, I'm 100% glad this is coming back.
And it's different. Out of those CW shows that we've gotten before, out of that grouping, it's a show that's fresh. It feels like it's not an attempt of like a new hero doing what's been done before in those shows, and that's something I think that they've managed to really do a good job with, as they've launched shows to give us new programming that, yes, it's another superhero show in that Arrowverse, but it really feels like it's valid and fresh and new and covers a very different ground. The idea of them all being descendants or linked to or inspired by legacy heroes, it really captures the spirit of what I love about the JSA in a way that is not at all what I expected, and I like that. Because I was, the geeky part of me was hoping we'd get all of the legacy heroes in the show. Getting, the original Green Lantern, the original Flash, all those people. Yep. The way that they did this, it really works for me. It really is, it has the right flavor. And that's kind of cool.
It's got a solid team dynamic, too.
Yes, yeah.
That's something that I was very pleased with. Again, you're mentioning of the JSA and how it does this, in a way, I don't want to say it's a JSA TV show, because it's not. It really is a Stargirl TV show. I like how they've done it, but they haven't made the team as, there's also this team. they're well integrated into the story without losing that this is a Stargirl story. I think that's the thing that I really enjoy about it.
Fandom is canceled this year. Jeremy made a great point. I didn't know there was one to cancel this year. And I agree, because at this point in time, we're in September, and there had been no promotion for it. I hate that. I hate that it's canceled, because I think there was a lot to embrace, a lot of things coming up that they could have promoted. To your point about promoting things like Shazam, promoting other movies going forward, TV shows, things. I guess this would have been a great opportunity to promote some of the stuff that should be continued. Not making this a yearly event is a mistake.
Yeah, big time.
They have their publishing arm. They have a gaming platform, games that are out there. Even if they did something shorter than what they've done in the past, I think one of the mistakes of last year's was that they didn't include a lot of that extra stuff. You remember there was old videos and shows and different things like that you could browse around. As kind of going into different halls at a convention. I honestly think this is a mistake.
Think about it. Fandom got me excited for Sandman and got me excited for Milestone.
Yeah.
And that right there are two things that I, without even batting an eye, can say it got me, jazzed for. And it's completely on Fandom. Because I really did, especially Milestone. That really got me going, oh man, I gotta watch it. This is cool. I gotta read this, And it's, I don't know. I personally think, again, like you said, I think this is a mistake to cancel it. I think they should have done it. Just because, there are live cons now, but guess what? It could have been something separate that DC. This was a solely DC only thing they were doing.
Yep.
They could have used this again. Some of the cool panels that I watched last year were some of the foreign stuff. They had the one Italy one. I can't think if it was last year or if it was the first year, but it was all these Italian creators, and they were talking about the different heroes that were their inspiration that brought them into the dance. And I thought that was a really neat, fascinating thing that, I'll be honest with you, if I was at a regular con, it would have been put on the bottom of the list. I'm like, oh, I'd like to see that, but I wouldn't have, if it feels up against something, it would have lost out. Whereas with Fandom, it had it completely set, and I, sat through it, and I thought that was a neat experience. So, I don't know. I think, it's done, so,
yeah.
And who knows what will happen if we'll ever get something like this again. I wish we would.
A Q&A with the current cast of Stargirl, a Q&A with the Sandman. There's, besides previewing product, there's stuff to promote right now that is out, that is available right now that people can enjoy. This is a mistake. Lois and Clark, promote that show. Yeah. There's Superman and Lois, I should say. Promote that show. There's a lot to promote. Promote the comics. I know for Fandom there has to be more. Obviously it's much more of a media approach. There's a game. To Jared's point earlier, how about have somebody play it?
Yes.
And put that onto Fanzone. Because wait, here's the thing. I would tune into that. I would like to see somebody play it. So that stuff would be really, really great. I'm with you. I also like the unique behind-the-scenes stuff that you can get from this type of thing that's really meant towards the hardcore DC fans. But I think Fandom was great because they did this reel that you could watch through the day that was kind of geared to everybody. To me, what I would have loved to have seen this year in Fandom was a little bit more of that extra stuff from year one that we got, and kind of done a hybrid of what worked in year one and what worked in year two. Yep. And gotten that. But you couldn't have put one together again? I'm worried that they thought that wasn't a positive for them. And to your point, you got excited about things that you wouldn't have otherwise. I did too. Milestone in particular was one I wouldn't say I wasn't excited about. It got me way more excited because of the fact that it was so personal. The Milestone presentation they had the creators talking about why Milestone was, so important to them and what they were trying to do with it. And I got behind them. I'm like, wow, these guys are really cool, and what they're trying to do with this line and what they originally tried to do with it is so neat. that I thought that personal connection that fandom did was something that was really a home run. And this is I think this is a mistake. I do. DC's Universal Distribution entering a new comic book direct market distribution agreement. I don't know whether this is good or not. I think any news about continued direct market distribution I think is good. I do know, as in recent years when we've heard about other companies being a part of a comic book distribution, that it's usually been met with positivity because of the fact that it just offers other opportunities for people to get published. If this leads to that, because I know take the big companies out of it. I know for independent publishers out there, it is hard sometimes to get published. And most of the time it's hard to get published. So I'm hoping that this means there's other opportunities for others as well. And that's where, a lot of times we look at the big, it's sometimes independents versus the larger companies. I think them being able to piggyback on some of this stuff, if that's a thing, and I'm going to say if, is a good thing. I would love to see, I love a bunch of product when I go into a comic shop. I am not in the camp that feels like, I think comic shops should be overwhelming because of choice. I think that allows a comic shop owner, to what I was talking about last week, to be able to be the active agent to say, hey, what kind of things do you like? And being able to walk somebody over to something that's currently being released that meets their interests. It's like, hey, you just popped in here and you think there might not be something for you. You're a fan of this or sci-fi? Here's a great sci-fi comic. Has nothing to do with superheroes. A great sci-fi comic published by this independent publisher. There's just a lot of really great product out there that I think can be pointed to. So The Flash is going to be going bi-monthly.
Nice.
And yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that's interesting. And I didn't know that was going to be a thing to it. I'm liking Jeremy Adams' run a great deal. And it's funny, this is a great example of how a news story... So Jared was mentioning that he's not as into the Wally Flash, for example, as I am, or I think you are now. This storyline, this release has him interested. So I think that's a great thing. Wait, this goes back to what we were saying before. Hey, maybe this would have been a great thing to bring up on Fandom. I guess we are sort of Fandom right now. But I think I think it's important to do it with a media presentation, because I would have loved to have seen the writer, the artist, talking about this, see some preview artwork, do one of those cool little reels that, show it in a way that makes it seem like it's in motion. And I would have loved to have seen this. But I'm excited for this run. I think that this creative team's hitting it out of the park. So them going bi-monthly is something that I think is pretty cool.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Superman did that 1 minute war kind of thing with the Kryptonians. So it's kind of neat when they acknowledge these super speedsters are going to do things in a little bit different than we are. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how not just the story plays out. I'm curious to see how the art team is going to handle this, because again, I'm really loving this art team on the Flash book. So I want to see how they're going to handle this concept of a 60-second war. That super speed.
And the idea that there's, obviously there's cool visual things to do with different speedsters. I think that is going to be awesome. I've always loved throughout the history of the Flash book when, and it really started, I know it's before the Wade run, but in the Wade run, he really started exploring Flashes from the future and different timelines that were coming in, and new ones got introduced. And I love both heroes and villains. And I like the idea of getting some more exploration of that. To your point, it can be visually cool when a creator really gets a chance to go hog wild with speedsters. So, yeah, this could be awesome, and I hope it is.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutrons!
Our first discussion is on Superman Warworld Apocalypse. The writer is Philip Kennedy Johnson. Art by Brandon Peterson, Will Conrad, Max Raynor, and Miguel MENDONCA. Color by Lee Lowridge. Letters by Dave Sharp. Color by Steve Beach. Variant covers by Mario Fox Vocillo, Prasad Rao Cressy, and Mikhail Janin. Assistant editor is Jillian Grant, and editor is Paul Kaminsky. And, of course, Superman was created by Cleveland's own Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family.
Can we talk about that Steve Beach cover?
Oh, my God. Yes. I absolutely love this. This I want as a poster. I 100% want that as a poster.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love the whole cover layout with the Superman Warworld Apocalypse, but I want, take all that text out of the way and just give me that, please.
Just give me this image, yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Because, I mean, it's a great cover, and everything that the production team did to make that into what it is phenomenal, but, oh my gosh, it feels like as epic as this story was. This story feels like it's gone on for a long time, and I sometimes when you say that, it makes it sound like a negative. I don't mean it that way. It's been a big story. It's been going on a long time. And I think what made it feel even longer was Future State. Mm-hmm. So the idea that, this was the future that we wanted to avoid, and then the future happened. And then you're like, well, what does that mean? I thought was a brilliant way to go about this, because it did add a dire sense to this all the way through. I really loved the use in this storyline, and I'm talking about the storyline as a whole, of not just the story that was going on in the front of the book, but the additional stories that were going on in the back that were expanding what this was like for Superman, for his team, for people back on Earth. I thought this did a really great job of giving you a complete tale with everything contained within the main Action Comics story in a way that I thought was really great. And we're going to talk about Jon's book. Jon's book, I think, really had a chance to, while it's reflective of that because Clark isn't there, it gave a chance for that book to breathe and have some independence. And we'll talk more about that when we get to that book. But I really, really enjoyed this story. I was at the point where this ending, I think, talk about appropriate pacing. This ending came at a time where I feel like now this story needed to wrap up in the most positive way I can say that. I was ready for the conclusion. And I think finding that sweet spot of how not to visit this too long, but also how not to make it too short, because it's got to feel epic. Yeah. This felt very epic. It built to a crescendo that was... This is satisfying. I don't know how you would have done anything besides this special. And when I read the last issue, and at first I thought that's what we were going to do on the show. And then I'm like, wait, this comes out next week? This is great. Yeah. Timing-wise, it wasn't... This special was not the plan. The plan was to do Action Comics. And we got lucky that this special came out when it did, because I love that we're doing the ending of this.
Dude, I'll tell you, every great story needs a beginning, middle, and end. It's the layout of every story. And pacing, timing, how much time you put in each of the three sections is an indicator of, again, that's what makes a great story, if they do it perfectly. And I'm so glad you brought that up, about how there is, we had that great build to the apocalypse. We had the great build to what was going to happen. Then the story is laying out. We had this, the fall and then the rise back up of the unbloodied sword. I love that analogy for Superman, that he's the unbloodied sword. And then just this epic ending. This was absolutely perfect story, beginning, middle, and ending. I'll tell you, Philip Kennedy Johnson, you're on my list right now. And that's the good list to be on of mine, because he crafted this beautiful story. And again, even the art team, the art team that was in Action Comics, this art team, all of these are also same people that I'm just keeping my eye on, because again, the actual story that's told is got to be one thing, but you do need a creative art team along with the writing, along with script. However, you need that, just that team working together to give us something like this. This is one of those things that I want this in, I want this in absolute. I want to one day just sit down and put down the Warworld saga, have it the beginning, the full story in one giant tome, and just sit back on a nice afternoon, and just relax and reread this years from now. This was again just a fabulous, wonderful story that I love. And again, the Steve Beach cover, I'm still staring at it because I'm like, I can't even sit there, and I'm not even going to say, oh, I would have done this. I would have. No. And I think that's, for me, is one of those things, because going through the story, I had different ideas on where the story may go and all that stuff. But you sit back and you love it, and you go through it, and you let them do their thing. You let them tell the story they want to tell. And they did it, in a great way. And I'm very happy that how this thing played out and how this ended. For me, this was an absolute wonderful ending. Wonderful.
You told me I was on your list once, and it didn't sound so pleasant.
Well, you weren't on the good list.
And you set it the same way, but with a different inflection.
You're on my list. Yeah, that's the bad list.
The thing that I really loved about this is, as this story's wrapping up, and there's so much to unpack here, all of the team, his authority, his team that has crafted off of this, I want to see what happens to them after this. Like, there's a lot for them to have to recover from. This was epic, and the impact on them psychologically and physically is something that you don't just go back to your life from before after being through this. It's going to have a major impact on you. I love that aspect of this, that I want to, and are we going to get those stories? I don't know, but I love that I want to, and I think that's important, that you care about the characters. It's Superman obviously is my guy, and I want to, follow through and read more of Superman, but I really grew to care for this team, this authority, this mishmash of characters that have been together. Because it's not the authority as a whole in the traditional sense. It's a different group of characters that have been put together, and I love that this team, the people that were on this team, I think have been forever changed because of this experience. And that's something that feels big too. And if that's not reflected somewhere at some point, that's a mistake, because wow, there's so much to build off of from this. And these are characters I would love to read an authority after this with this team.
Oh my God. Again, you're reading my mind, dude. I 100% wanted an authority book out of this one. Mm-hmm. And you just take this team right here, and you put them in the book. And they did some great groundwork laying. Again, I've always been a Midnighter fan. I've always loved the guy. And this, again, this was another series that made me just go, I really like him. And then, you add him and Apollo's story into it. I always liked those two together. The light and the dark, working together, and just, I'm like, again, just so many neat stuff that happened in here. Natasha Irons, she's a great character.
Yeah.
That, I love Steels. It's, again, 100% part of the Superman family. She's always been she's part of it, but she's not really. She doesn't have the big S on her chest normally. She's got her own thing. She's her own entity, her own person, and I love that about her. There's a great character. This kind of brings her back more into the fold of the House of L. And I kind of liked seeing that. And I'd love to see her story continue on as well. And just, again, any of the authority that they introduced here, I want them to continue on.
At least give them a miniseries.
Oh, definitely, yeah. An aftermath story.
Yeah. Whoever thought we'd see a story where Midnighter's wearing a Superman cape and carrying a Superman shield, yelling for Superman as a battle cry.
Yep.
And you going, it makes sense.
Yes.
100%. If you a decade ago told me that was going to be a thing, and I was going to say, yeah, and that'll make sense, I would have been like, oh, that sounds so corny. It is badass in this.
And especially how they built it.
Oh,
yes. The story. Where Midnighter initially was like, no, I don't care about Superman. I only care about Apollo. I'm going to get him free and get out of here. And we're gone. to being a part of the Resistance, to being a general in Superman's army, to having the battle cry for Superman, And again, I love his motivational speech, about how, Mogul's throwing all these people out. Why? Because he's afraid of us. And like, yeah, for the unbloodied sword. I'm like, yeah. Again, I really love that unbloodied sword, if you can't tell. I think that is just an absolute wonderful thing for Superman. Again, he was initially looked at as being weak because he wouldn't take life, and he showed them how it is stronger not to take a life, how it is and they rallied behind it. Now all his people are killing people left and right. They're not leaving him undead, but they respect Superman that he doesn't take a life. I love just how they played that out. And again, they spent multiple issues building this. They didn't just say, oh, everyone's, yeah, okay, cool, Superman. Not on Warworld. Warworld, they would look at him differently. And they showed why he turned the people around, why he was able to build up this revolution. I again, can't say how much I love the time they spent on building stuff like that to lead to this moment.
Krillux and the betrayal, I thought, was something that I didn't see coming, and I'm kicking myself afterwards. I'm like, I should have seen it coming, but I loved how, it made sense. So when it happened, it wasn't one of those things like, oh, where did that come from? It was like, oh, of course. And then it further makes sense as it's laid out in this story. But what happens, I knew the kids were in trouble.
Yeah.
I saw it, I didn't see it going where it did, but in traditional Superman fashion, Superman does the right thing. He had the opportunity to take the power for himself. And instead, he did use the power to save the kid, which is a Superman thing to do. The fight with Mogul and Superman and Mongul and Superman, and the battle over with Clark not having his powers per se, and I put that under quotes because he's still powered, but not the way that we're used to him being powered. I loved the passion of the battle. I think that was something that really came through. It's great to have this sense of an epic battle with Superman where you see that whether he has powers or not in the sense that we're used to seeing, he's still Superman. This really showed who Superman is as a person. It's not the powers that make the man. It's the man's code, the man's way of carrying himself that people rally behind. It's something where I get really passionate about this Superman being a symbol. And you get why that symbol means something. And this is everything I love about being a Superman fan. It's in this story. It's something you don't get with any other character. You can't. I mean, it's something that's unique about him. I think there's standout characters that have lasted the test of time because writers have been able to get the character's core so much that then they're able to play around with it and do stuff like this that make you go, wow, that is so awesome and so reflective of who this guy is. We get that with Batman. We get that with Wonder Woman. We get that with Superman. Over at Marvel, you get it with Spider-Man. You get it with the X-Men. There's certain characters where writers will get what's going on with those characters. Daredevil is a great... Chip Zdarsky's run on that was a great example, I think, of pushing the envelope of that character. These are characters who they mean something, even though they've been around for so long, because writers are able to go back to the drawing board, get to the core of the character, and do something that really makes you think. This is a story I will reread again and again. This is a storyline that I can see 10 years from now, us talking about, hey, I just reread that, and having deep discussions over the things that we discovered about the story or the way we feel about the story a decade later. This is one of those stories. This story will stand the test of time. It really will.
Superman's greatest weakness isn't kryptonite. It is the innocent lives. And the great villains really do use that against him. And I loved seeing how this played out. And also, you also see his greatest strength. It's not superpowers, flight, or anything. It is his heart. It is the fact that he is a Kansas farm boy who his whole life has been taught to use, its might for right, he's not a conqueror. He's not a monster. He's not a murderer. He is a champion. He is protector of the innocent. And I love seeing that, again, in these sequences, in this fight sequence. You really do see that. And I loved how he does inspire people. He is hope. The his death cry basically is truth and justice. He won't let Superman give up the power. He's willing to die for the cause, and I absolutely love that. And then when you see this Clark just rise up, after he killed him, and it wasn't even just about when Mogul's just taunting him about how you don't have your powers. Like, that's why you'll always lose. You give up. He never gives up. He will never quit, and that is the thing. That is the true ideology of Superman. Knock him down, he gets back up. And I absolutely love this sequence. Love seeing what he did. Love seeing, again, Superman use the powers to use the knife, the fire to save the kid instead of using it on himself, because that's the right thing to do. That's the person who should have that power. And I want to see what's going to happen with that kid later on. That energy came into him, gave him life, but did that also change him?
Isn't that the thing, though? We talk about that being his greatest weakness, but isn't that, in the end, what makes it his greatest strength?
Yes.
The fact that he won't compromise himself, that he will stick to his guns, and he will keep fighting for what he believes in, even when it seems hopeless. Because this whole story's been about that. This has seemed hopeless. And yet, he's continued to fight on. He's continued to shine a light. He hasn't compromised himself. He hasn't compromised his belief in others and his belief in protecting others. I think that has shown where people think it's like Mongul was intending to use this against him. It didn't work.
Right.
It did not accomplish what Mongul thought it was going to do. He thought it was what made Superman weaker, and instead, Superman stuck to his guns, did what he does best, and in the end, it worked out to Superman's advantage because of the fact that that window of opportunity that others might not take, that being in the right place at the right time, looking at things just a little differently, ended up paying off for him. I mean, most people wouldn't have done what Superman did, and therefore would not have wound up repowered like Superman was, because circumstance, because of Superman being who he was, let him be in the place where he could have that happen. And he could have very easily taken the power for himself and beaten Mongul. But he would have lost what makes him Superman in that process. And in many ways lost the rally of all the people behind him. Be like, oh, that's how he solved it? Well, yeah. Okay, then what he was saying wasn't true. And he wouldn't have inspired people the same way that he did. I loved that aspect of it, where it wasn't just the ability to beat Mongul out of this. It was the fact that he was able to, through his code, inspire so many other people from it. I just was blown away by that. And yes, it's such a Superman story in that respect, but it's great that a writer's able to take me back to that moment where I'm like, okay, I feel like a kid again reading Superman and seeing Superman do these amazing things. And I think writers can get that wrong. And he certainly did not get this wrong at all. That's where pacing, I think, was a gem on this one.
Oh, big time. Yeah, again, I can't speak more highly about how I loved the layout of this, how I loved they did this, but also how much they took time on all the different pieces. Mm-hmm. And that, for me, again, you got to give the story enough breathing room. You got to give enough story for it to build. Again, it's that building, then the crescendo, then just that epic, that ending. And again, the Natasha Irons sequences in the Star Forge and the Engine City and all that, those were some great stuff, especially early on. We laid down some really cool groundwork where originally Midnighter was going to destroy, the Star Forge, because that was one of the things that was keeping Apollo trapped. But because they convinced Midnighter to join the cause, he didn't destroy that. And this is the thing they needed for the ultimate win. So again, it was brilliant just layout. And even later on in the book, they do kind of throw that back at Midnighter's face. Aren't you glad you didn't destroy it now? And again, little funny moment inside this great epic action. Nothing took it away. But again, story building on itself, story meaning something. And I absolutely love these sequences.
Listen, dude, you and I both have gone camping over the years, right?
Yep.
I've got the greatest idea for the ultimate geek camping accessory. That lantern with the baby in it. Because here's the thing. If you don't know the context of this story, that is nothing but creepy.
And, hold on. Even if you know the context of the story, it's creepy, dude.
Oh, 100%, but at least you know the context of the story. Can you imagine that? Like, you're sitting there, like, making s'mores, and you've got that sitting beside you. As your camping lantern. But that would be the ultimate
creepy, but
like,
actually kind of cool.
You buy, like, here's the thing. If they sold it, you know you'd buy it, right? I would buy one of those.
In a heartbeat.
Yes.
Without even question, without a second of hesitation, I would 100% want an orphan lantern. And I love the fact that they do comment, that Natasha does comment about how, I think we should have been more afraid of Orphan than we were. Indeed. I'm like, yeah, there's some serious power levels in this guy.
There's a lot of lore that's been created from this, though. Boy, this Orphan thing was really, really terrific. I love how that all happened. And then Orphan was recombined, and now you've got, like, this new weapon that came out of it. I just thought that was really, really cool how they joined back together. And, like, this is another example of something. I would love to see this story live action. Like, I normally would go to, like, this would be great as animation. I don't know. Do this one as live action. I'd love to see this. With today's tech, you could really do some cool CGI stuff and make this into, like, a story people talk about. I mean, I would love to see this one.
Oh, big time. They could really do an awesome job with this one.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm hoping for, you know, eventually a Superman movie announcement and that they try at this again. But this is the kind of story that really should be on the screen. Yeah.
Again, you know, I completely agree with you. I love this. Would be, you know, again, the whole Warworld Apocalypse story would be an epic, monumental task, and that would be something that I'm like, this would be a 3-movie deal, you know. But
or on the Superman and Lois,
be all in on it.
We got a TV show right now that you could put it on.
Yeah. Oh God, could you imagine them taking the Superman and Lois story and doing a Warworld Apocalypse story on it? A whole season of, they could do this on the whole season, especially if his one kid really does, you know, really turn into a Superboy. He could take over have him take over the mantle as Superman, you know, and actually do the whole story that we've got currently going on with, you know, Son of Kal-El and all that. They could really flesh this thing out.
I mean, later seasons. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be right now, but I'm saying this would be a great template to play around with.
Oh, big time.
I like the fight with Apollo and seeing Apollo eventually, you know, be reawakened and all that. I thought that was great because what it showed is the power of Apollo, right? And that's something that's hard to do when you've got a Superman story, to also showcase somebody of Apollo's nature. Because really, technically, Apollo right now in this story was more powerful than Superman because of Superman's current condition.
Yep.
So you got to see how his team was manipulated, and that added to this whole sense of danger. I want to see Apollo and Midnighter after this. I'd like to see them, you know, where do they go from here? What does that look like?
And I'll tell you, the whole Apollo story, I was completely confused for a moment because when the Justice League showed up, I'm like, what? Wait, how did they get there?
That was great.
What did I miss? And even after Apollo rips off the thing off his back, it took me a little bit to realize that was an illusion. Yep. Oh my God, that is awesome. I absolutely loved seeing that.
Ditto.
This for me was absolutely epic.
Yeah, and like you, I'm nodding my head as you're going through it. I was swerved by that too. And I love when you're like sitting there, and it made sense. Like when the reveal of it being Manchester Black, you go, of course. But I did not see that. I thought like, oh wow, was this the plan all along that the Justice League was going to come in and like save the day and all of that? And I was like, no, it's way cooler than that.
Yes. Well, because the sequence that got me shocked was when Apollo blasts and blows, does his energy blast and basically blows the head of a Cyborg off. I'm like, oh my God, they just killed Cyborg. What the heck? You know? And then when you see him ripping it out, I still like, and then that's when it was finally, seeing Manchester Black go, holy hell, the illusion worked. I'm like, oh my God, that is brilliant. Absolutely love it. And again, I always love seeing Apollo and Midnighter together,
It was such a cool way that the whole thing was an attack for the purpose of having Apollo save himself.
Yeah.
And it was such a great sequence of events. Knowing that, that planned attack was something that you could only do with these characters who they skirt the edge, right? Manchester Black and Midnighter both skirt the edge, and those two teamed up. It is so why I want to read the book with them. I just think this team together is a great concept. It'd be edgy, and that part I just really, really love. Leah and Mac and this whole, he turned because of the turn because of what happened to Leah. I loved that whole storyline. I wanted to see where that was going to go. I like that Mac finally just said, all right, I'm wrong here. I just want to save her. And that, this team re-embracing Mac and working together for the purpose of saving Leah, I just thought was really great. I really enjoyed that whole sequence. It was an awesome battle. There was so much destruction in this, and you get to see people sacrificing themselves because they start believing in the cause. And that sequence with Natasha where you get to see, the sacrifice that ends up going on there for, it was Leonath?
Leonath, yeah.
Yeah. Leonath was a great character that goes back to the beginning, a great example of a character who was inspired that in the beginning of this story would not have done this. Now would. I think you needed that moment where you're like, wow, everything Superman was trying to do here has been paid off in that moment. Where this is somebody who's willing to sacrifice themselves for the cause because they believe in it. And that was something that was just awesome. I'm looking at the page right now of the battle between Superman and Mongol again. Yeah. Where Superman's already made the choice with giving up the gift. I knew at this, I'm like, he's going to get powered up soon. I don't know when, but it's like coming. You just know that like what he did there is somehow going to pay off. And when it did, it was so awesome. Because the heat vision coming through, the dead will never belong to you, Mongol. And then you see him there and okay, things are a little different now.
Super back.
Yeah, I was so jonesing for this. And we've waited so long for this that I could not wait to see that happen. I was also glad to see that it wasn't Clark. The death came from the traitor, right?
Yep.
That was a great way for that to go, because it added to this whole intrigue piece. And I really, really enjoyed that.
I'll tell you, I love this sequence so much because not only you get that cool Clark moment when he's up there, and again, our teamwork did this brilliant job of him standing, and he's all energized and getting. And I remember sitting there going, okay, now we're going to get an epic Superman powered up fight. This is going to be awesome. Nope, they take it away from you.
Yep. You
flip the page, you're like, that is awesome. Again, I was, and one of the things about this book that I so loved this story was there's stuff I'm like, okay, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. No, they gave me something completely different. Oh, that is cool. And I think that the big swerves that kept coming up, was part of my real enjoyment of it. And again, watching this version of Mogul die, and I did air quotes around the word die, just because I don't think he's, Mogul as a concept is not done. There's going to be the next one's going to rise up. There's going to be more of this guy. He's not out of there. And they've done that with this character so many times that we know we could kill one off and the next one will rise up. So I'm looking forward to the next version of this guy coming through the pipeline. But I absolutely love just how, again, this one, died. The slave that he entrapped and imprisoned and all that, his people that he slaughtered, rises up, kills them. And that was his plan from the beginning. And I love how, we get a villain, because this guy is the villain, and he, it's one of those great villains where they're justified in their mind. They're not conquering the world. What they're doing is they're protecting their people. This is how he's chose to do it. Yes, he sacrificed a lot of lives. He set up and got a lot of his people killed. But in the end, the ends will justify the means to him. And I love that we got that kind of villain, because as much as Superman is about hope and saving all lives, he is the opposite side of that, where to make an omelet, you got to break a couple eggs. So I really loved seeing this, again, a brand new villain for Superman to deal with. Great groundwork for him, great layout. Looking forward to future stories with this guy.
Dude, they brought back the Black Racer.
Yeah.
That was sweet. I did not expect that from the story. I don't remember that being like us knowing that's what happened to Leah.
They did show when she died. It was a quick flash kind of thing, if I'm remembering from the issue.
Okay.
After she died, that's how they brought her back, was fusing her with the Black Racer.
Okay.
But the fact that, when Mac pulls Leah out of it, the Black Racer is now there. And now the Black Racer is up and about now.
Yep.
They're on their way. And I thought that, for me, was a great usage of it, in that, you really do, they show it, the racer, forming and then taking off.
Did they
so
show
now
it?
The Black Racer's back in the mix. It's cool.
I'm sorry. Did they show it as a merging with the Black Racer before? I think that's the part what I'm getting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they did show that. But again, It was one of those kind of brief things like this.
Okay.
It wasn't a major story. Yeah, and from what I remember, I can't remember which issue it was, but after she died, they showed the merging with the Black Racer.
I see. I must have read that wrong, and I'm glad you're clarifying how you saw it, because I took it as that was just symbolic of the fact that she died. I didn't realize it was emerging back then. I'm glad they did this, because now coming out of the story, I think big stories like this, what's really important is what is it left changed? What is new for the world? When you think about the story that's going on right now in the DC universe, having a Black Racer back again, woo!
Yep. Oh yeah, yeah, and Leah's different too in this.
Yes,
because she even says, I'm here, I feel different, and I know things I didn't know before. So how does that change her? And again, I keep wishing that Mac doesn't actually die, but I don't know, because she says she'll make him better, and maybe some of the new knowledge she has maybe can bring him back. I don't know. Again, that's why I really do want a follow-up on the Authority characters.
Yeah, I do too. The way this story wrapped up was real interesting, because you've got, differing philosophies where, Clark's like, Krillux, after you've turned on us, you're saying that we could be allies and friends and things like that. I don't see how we get back from this. And there is a point where you can maybe understand the betrayal, you can understand the whys and what the person was trying to do, but not agree with it. And I liked Superman's explanation of that. I've had, and we both have in our life, right? We've had situations with friends, we've had situations with people we were close to, where things have happened that, and you and I can think about friendship groups that we've been a part of together over the years, where certain things have happened where, yeah, we can be friendly after this, but friends like we were we're not going to be able to get there, and it's always unfortunate when that happens. But, when you hit a certain level of betrayal, that impacts you. Certainly, I'm not referencing that we've had betrayal on this level, but I mean, we've both experienced at least elements of betrayal from people that have been close to us, where you're like, there can be healing, there can be friendship after this, but it's not necessarily the same thing. And I think that's very real. That's real life, right? Where, I think we've had that. A listening audience has had that. There's been people that you've been friends with where, is there a path afterwards? Sure, there is. There can be a path. And Superman alludes to, I don't see how, but I don't feel like when Clark says that, he's closing the door. It's more of he's realizing how monumental it would be to get to that point. I liked that. I felt very real, very grounded. And I liked that about the story. I think it was a very good presentation of that. We can relate, right?
Yeah. Well, And I love the fact that our villain in this story was like, saying, I count you as a friend and an ally. And I hope we can one day be together again. And even when Clark's like, I don't see how that's possible, I love his response. Perhaps not. Even so, you've taught me to hope. Yes. So here's the villain saying, I hope we can be friends. And I honestly think this wasn't him trash talking. This wasn't him being snarky. He honestly would like to be friends with Superman again. He would like to have that friendship again. But he's not going to stop doing what he's doing. He's got the plan for vengeance for his people. There's a lot of people who have to answer for what happened to his people, and he's not going to be like, hey, let's just, let's have international justice. No, justice is the head on a spike. That's what he is going for, flat out. And I love the fact that we have these two characters who, again, this is a great villain. And I'm using air quotes around villain because, yes, he's the bad guy, but there is so much you kind of understand what he's saying. And I'm hoping there can be a redemption for him later on because he is a cool character, but I also do love him as a bad guy. So I kind of want to see more stories between him and Clark. And actually I'd love to see stories between him and Jon. I think he versus Jon would be a really neat story because of, just Jon's connection to the optimism that Jon really has and Jon's connection to just the more of the intergalactic, Jon, he's got that, he has that Superman qualities where he is Superman. But there is always something a little bit different on how he looks at life than how Clark looks at it. And I kind of really like that groove, and I think the Jon and him would have a really neat story arc. Now, again, Clark is always going to be awesome, and those two, when they bring them back together again and they go one-on-one, I want to see that. But I think it'd be kind of a neat little twist to have it be Jon.
Can we address Snickers real quick? Because we never really talked about this on the show. So every so often, you've probably heard in the back of our podcast, especially in the last maybe 6 months, my cat in the background. So what you don't know is behind the scenes what this looks like for us. So I've got a cat who's Snickers has been with me for the entire tenure of this podcast, right? I mean, because that was back in the days when you used to come over to our old house and we used to do this with you like horribly uncomfortably put into a corner because Jim and I used to record in what was my office at my old house, and this was back in the day before Skype was ready for prime time to do what we do now, and we had a mixer and 2 different microphone setups, and we had to be like a suitable distance away from each other so that way our respective microphones were not giving feedback. So it was a different sort of time. But my cat's getting old now. I mean, we've been doing the podcast for over 17 years, and we'd had her for a few years before you and I started doing this. So she's getting up there. She's deaf now and meows like crazy when she wants attention. And she doesn't realize she keeps meowing. Well, I think she knows she keeps meowing, but there's no like two-way interchange that involves in that whole thing other than if you're playing with her or pick her up. And even then, there's still a meowing aspect that goes on. It's not the greatest thing when you podcast.
No.
So there's times where I've had her in the room with me and she's sleeping. Great. She's comfortable. She's here and she's quiet. And, I'm glad that she's happy. Then she'll start meowing when we're in here. So then I will put her out of the room, because she'll go by the door and meow because she wants to get out. Then she'll come back like 15 minutes later and bang on the door like she's the big bad wolf. Again, none of these things are good for podcasting. So apologies for the occasional cat noise that you get. Please understand that the cat noise that actually comes through the podcast versus what Jim and I will re-record like sometimes a couple of sentences because she gets excessive. And I'll go and put her somewhere else or give her a snack or something. And then we'll go back to finishing up the recording. But we never really addressed it on the show, so I figured, let's take a couple seconds to talk about it, because I literally just had to address that now.
A couple times in this discussion, there was a meow.
Right.
And I get chuckling every time I hear Snickers.
Oh, it's funny, but I end up cutting out most of it, because like we'll re-record sequences so that way, because it really becomes a battle of she's loud when she really gets going. Like you'll hear it in the background on a couple of these shows, but when she gets going, it's us fighting her, and we're losing.
Yes.
She's a super kitty. But anyway, back to this story. This ending was, I love these. This is before we even get to the epilogue. That sequence with Superman hugging the two kids and Leah carrying Mac. And there was so many, the celebration of we won. It felt like the ending of like the Star Wars trilogy where there was the set ending there. And I love that this felt like a space cosmic epic. I love this kind of stuff. This was what I was hoping for from this. And this is before we get to weeks later where it's like, all right, now there's going to be some SmackDown payback for what didn't happen here. You like the United Planets, this great governing group that was supposed to help out. We know that there's some corruption going on with the United Planets. Well, so does Krillux. And what happened there I thought was so great. He's like, listen, you need to understand we're a new society here, and United Planets didn't help us. We will not forget it. We won't let you either. I loved that ending because it's true, right? United Planets could have stepped in at any point in time and been a force to help fight for this. They chose not to. That was cowardice. I also think it feels very contemporary to our own world condition, right? As far as it's a statement on war and when do other countries step in and, what kind of atrocities are appropriate for us to, and we all, I think, go through this. I mean, we have world atrocities going on right now that it's like, okay, why aren't more countries stepping in? Why isn't more being done to help out with this? I love when art imitates life and it makes you sit there and scratch your head and go, well, there's a point being made here that I think we can learn from. And that's comics at their best have done stuff like this where whether it was intended in the forefront or in the background, it has that kind of unintended consequence. Doesn't matter. I love that I can feel that this story has resonance to our current world condition. I love that. I think it's something that it's where I think comics can make you better, and really make some statements in a way that maybe even articles about the current world condition don't always have the same impact, which is, I know, a strange thing to say, but sometimes when you see fictional characters going through something, they stamp for you right from wrong in a way that I think when you're too close to something, maybe you're not able to see it the same way. Mm-hmm. This is like, I don't know if it had the same resonance for you, but I certainly connected it to things that are going on in the world today in a way that, I don't know, made me proud to be a comic fan, that like, this is something that it makes you talk about larger issues, like, and, sympathy and support for countries that are going through atrocities and, stuff that's going on in the Ukraine, those type of things. I mean, there's a lot to connect with in this story. And I really loved that, whether it was intended to or not, this story made me think of that. And that's where, again, I think this is literature.
Oh, big time, dude. I completely, as you were talking, I'm nodding my head along with you in agreement. I 100% looked at that, and this is one of the neat things about a really epic story like that is that we'll have these connections. Again, whether intended or not, yeah. I don't know, but completely agree with you on it. And throughout history, any of these atrocities that have happened, you have these rise up moments. You have these moments where the feel good champions win, and any of the epic stories, you have that. And I loved how this story really did play it out. That one page spread that you're talking about with the celebration, they had some really cool moments in there. They spent time with it, like the one panel where the kid's getting up and then Superman's hugging him. But also on another panel, when they're showing the people who were previously slaves are now removing the chains. Because you think back to how the links of a chain, meant something to them. because, it was the number of kills, you get a new link and this and that, and it was a statue. If you had more chains, it was a higher status and all that. Now in this new society, that doesn't matter, and they're removing their chains. And I loved seeing that sequence. And again, going back to talking about with the United Planets weeks later, absolutely loved how this played out. This guy, the planets, United Planets, multiple times screwed over his people. And we're seeing them cut side deals with Mongol to curry favor. And I loved how they're getting called on it. And this, for me, was an epic ending to this. You had this joyful moment, which was wonderful, and then you get to this ultimate, basically throwdown of, one day soon, you and your United Planets will beg me for mercy the way I once begged you. What do you think my answer will be? I absolutely love that notion of it's time for you to pay for what you did. And again, why I think this guy is an absolute wonderful, great villain. I so want to see more of him.
Yeah. It is a terrific, terrific story on that end. This ending with Lois, I didn't know if we were going to get this because, the next story is the return of Superman coming back. I was so glad we saw it at the end of this, the way that we did it. And through Lois's letter, that was such a great story where you got to see what Lois is dealing with right now and how she was writing to Clark as a way to maintain her sanity, reflect, healing. I'm a big fan of journaling. I'm a big fan of anything you do for mental health. And I think nowadays mental health and wellness and talking to others, whether it's, speaking to a counselor, speaking to friends, journaling yourself, any of those things I think are really, really effective. And I was glad that it felt real today. I knew where this was going. You felt like it was like this build to where it was going to go. And even so, I popped at the moment where he flew through the window and you see the two of them together there in their space, their spot, that exactly what she was asking for. Seeing Clark there in his glory, that was exactly the way that this should go. And I can't wait for the next issue of Action Comics. This story arc has made me glued to this. It's got me excited for Clark's return. It's why, yes, I'm loving Jon as Superman, and we're going to talk so much about that in the next sequence here. But I want Clark back in the worst way.
Oh, big
that's no negative reflection on his. It's just the opposite. I want his series to continue. I want to read more of what he's doing over there. But yes, I want to see Kal back. I want to see what that's going to look like and where we go from here. And where we go from here should embrace everything that has happened leading up to this point.
Oh, big time, man. I tell you, I was worried that we weren't going to get this. Because I think last time we talked about this story arc, I was saying I didn't think that we would get this moment. Because I was just worried just how, I don't know, it just seemed like the groove of this story was going to be that we weren't going to get this Lois and Clark moment back. We weren't going to get the Clark and Jon moment back. That he was going to go over to Warworld and never make his return back to Earth. And I was worried about that. Now, again, I would have been fine with the story that way, but I'm so happy that we got this. So I always love Lois and Clark together. I always love these moments, of these two together. And it always is that positive, like, yes. This right in the sunrise. And again, as you said, how she's journaling, how she's writing, and she's talking about Sunrise Point and how it is their special spot. And again, it would be a little bit different for them. Everybody, you got your couples, they've got their spot, that thing that they do, that little quirk thing. For them, it's flying above Metropolis while the sunrise is coming up. That's a true Superman moment. And I absolutely love the fact that they actually have that, and they have this now in the story. 100% was so thrilled, so excited, so happy for this. This, for me, was a great ending to this story. With, you think back to just how there was so much just hopelessness, so much despair, and Clark just kept fighting through it, being Clark. being Superman, being just this force of hope and positivity and just this great energy that is Superman. And, to have it end like this was absolutely, again, perfect ending. And like you said, I am 100% excited for, 1047 when it comes out. I'm like, yes, please, please.
Now I can get out of here.
Our next discussion is going to be of Superman Son of Kal-El, issue number 14. The script is by Tom Taylor. The art by Cian Tormey, Ciantormey. Colors are by Federico Blee. Letters by Dave Sharp. Cover by Travis Moore and Tamra Bonvillain. Variant covers by Rafael Sarmento and Travis Mercer, Danny Mickey and Brad Anderson. Assistant editor is Jillian Grant. Editor is Paul Kaminsky. Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. And apologies for any name butchery. This has been a really, really fun series. I have loved the fact that not only am I getting interested in Jon, but Jon's world. Jon's got a supporting cast, and that supporting cast has become really important to me. And it's a supporting cast that goes beyond just his parents and the typical Daily Planet staff. Jon's getting his own life going. I want to see Lois Lane. I love that Lois Lane is a part of the truth. That totally works for me. That part makes a ton of sense. But I love that we get to learn more about Jon's boyfriend. We get to learn more about that whole group. We get to learn, Gossamer, the idea of this being a concept. And Jon having to help him through the fact that he was anonymous. Nobody knew who he was. This reveal has changed everything in his life, and Jon has to be a support in a very different way. It's how to deal with the fact that your identity's out there now. Yeah. Your anonymity is no longer a thing. Jon's had to deal with that in a very huge way with what happened with his father. It's almost a role reversal where he was trying to give Jon a sense of what anonymity can do, like a secret identity, so Jon can shut down from being Superman. Well, now Jon's got to help him with what happens when you can't. Yep. And I love that part of this story. It added a whole different layer to their, it added the two-way interchange to that relationship that I think is so important. There's times where comics get criticism for not knowing how to handle relationships or make relationships compelling or interesting. What's got to eventually happen is the relationship has to end. This is a great example of how you continue evolving a relationship in a way that's natural and real to the circumstances, and it makes the characters feel more human. That's how you make them relatable. I love that part of this book. I think this is really solid writing, and it's something that I'm not getting in other books. I'm not getting that with Linda and Wally in the same way. And I think that's something that is really, really being done well in this one. And that's not a knock on Linda and Wally. Linda and Wally should not be this because it's a different relationship. That's how you keep them fresh. Superman and Lois are not the same relationship. I love that. I love that part of this. It doesn't feel like ground that's been tread before, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, and it's funny because you think about it. With the Lois and Clark relationship, you've got, you see, and you understand how could this man who's got godlike powers be so in love with just this mere mortal? Well, she's not a mere mortal. She's Lois Lane. She's awesome. And they needed to have that strength. With Jon, you had to have that same kind of deal. And again, it's a different type of strength. It's a different type of character. It's a different type of belief. It's a different type of thing. But you had to have that understanding. Why would Jon be in this relationship? Why would Jon, what would come from it? And they did a great job showing, just the birth, the growth, and development of this relationship to the point in this story where I love the moments where it really did tug at the heartstrings when he's flying and holding, he's got to let go. He's got to drop him over the city, and he's got to drop him, and he just doesn't want to let go. Yeah. And I love that sequence. Again, he's like, don't worry, you don't have to. And he just phases through Jon's hands because he knows Jon so well. There are some great relationship moments intermixed with the combat, intermixed with the action. And I think that, for me, is how you really do tell great stories. You think back to some of the cool moments with Arthur and Mira, when they're in the middle of combat, and you really do see that. The Bruce and Selena moments where you really see that relationship tied up in the middle between the bat and the cat. That's how you have to make sure your relationship. Oh, Green Arrow and Black Canary, come on. That, again, another wonderful relationship that they've really done, tie that's personalized to them. You got to make sure that's what you got to do to have a good, positive relationship, a good, where the relationship doesn't take away from the character, but accentuates it. We need to have cool costume moments. I need Superman moments with Jon, but I also need Jon Kent moments. I need moments of him as a person. And this series has been doing a brilliant job with that. I am so glad that he is considered Superman, not Superboy. And I love the fact that, in with the credits, because sometimes when Connor is in, when Connor Kent is in there, and I love Connor, they call him Superboy, and they'll do that credit where Superboy created by Jerry Siegel. With these books, they're not saying that because he's not Superboy. Jon is not Superboy anymore. He is Superman. The only thing they have is Superman created by Siegel and Schuster. Absolutely love the fact that they are 100% embracing Jon as Superman. And going forward, he will always be Superman. And I want to, again, I so want to see Jon and Kal together again and just see father and son hanging out and just these great moments of the father-son moments. But again, I have Superman in Jon, 100%. I want Clark back because, again, he's Clark. I never want to get rid of Clark, but I am getting some great Superman stories. And I love the fact that we have that and that they're letting Jon be Superman. Not just in name, but in action, in ideology, in just the way he presents himself. He is Superman. 100% thrilled with this series.
Jay is important to get screen time, too. And the reason why is what you don't want is this relationship to be a stunt. And it's not. One of the things that I love about this story is exactly everything that you're saying. We're getting to know Jay more. We're getting to know Jay's code more. We're getting to know who Jay is as a person. And getting to see that he and Jon are not the same person. There's a yin and a yang in that relationship like you get from any strong relationship. And you're seeing it gradually grow. This is a relationship in its infancy. But if I don't care about Jay, if I don't care, you think it's way cool that Jay got a costume in this, that Jon gave him a Legion flight ring, and there was that whole moment of, it's not that, it's a Legion flight ring. I thought that was a great sequence of events, but if you're not doing those moments, if you're not having them have that conversation between them and that kind of build, then, I'm not starting to care about them as a relationship. Then this becomes a shallow stunt, and it doesn't mean anything. I love that they just happen to be a gay relationship. So what? I care about the characters. I'm very intrigued by them. And it's their interactions and interplay with each other that has become far more compelling for me. As it continues to evolve, there's more substance to the relationship, and that's when I start to care. And I care now. I care about this relationship. I care about what's going on in this book. And that's great writing. And
yes.
It's character development is really, really important in a book like this because there's so much new to it. And that's something that I really love. And I say there's so much new, but we're also bringing characters that were in Suicide Squad recently that I just absolutely adored. And we're bringing them back as revolutionaries in this story. It makes total sense. And I love that these characters are coming back from the larger DC universe because I loved their appearances before. And getting to see them back again and a part of all this totally makes sense to me. And I really love their interplay in this because I think they're great characters, and it was great to see them back in this story.
And they completely fit in.
Yep.
Just because of everything going on with Bendis and Gamora, 100% they make sense. But again, I loved the moments. Again, Jon's moments with them when he's laying out the rules. Hey, we go in there, we don't kill. This is not killing. We're not about killing those powers. Those are actually trapped people. Those are the victims, the people we're trying to save. And when they fire back with the fact, hey, there's casualties in war. This isn't a war. This is a rescue. We take out the controllers, not the people they control. If you're not good enough to do this without killing, then maybe you're not good enough to come with us. Absolutely love that. Yeah. That for me was a great moment. It had a lot of Clark in him, but it was 100% pure Jon. I was like, absolutely. I was like, you know what? That right there was absolutely wonderful idea. Again, it's that blending of the ideology. That's a pure Superman ideology. So it's Clark, but it's also modernizing with Jon. Absolutely loved how they laid that out. They very easily could have done it differently. For me, this was a perfect usage of Jon and just how he looks at life and how he explains and and deals with people.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously, then that led to one of my favorite scenes of the book. Not my favorite, but one of, like, probably number 2, is when they're sitting there saying, hey, this isn't going to work. He's already made up his mind. No, he hasn't. Jon doesn't prejudge. Trust me. I'm his best friend, and I used to be an assassin. Absolutely love. Robin sneaks into a submarine underwater undetected. Yes! I love the little monster. Damian is absolutely wonderful. I love the sequences between Jon and Damian. Love the fact that he had to give him a big hug as soon as he saw him because of last issue he saw that shocking death of Damian, saw his friend die in this horrific manner. Absolutely loved it. I was like, that for me, anytime you get Damian and Jon together, I always cheer. They, 100% makes sense. It's a different type of friendship than Clark and Bruce have. And again, you need to have it personalized for the characters. It's not going to be the exact same thing. They're kind of brought together because of their fathers, but they on their own path develop their own friendship, develop their own respect to each other. Absolutely love this sequence, man. It was like it was one of those. This was one of my favorite scenes in this.
Those two being the Super Sons and being brought together again is something that I have come to really adore. That friendship. It's what I love about the Clark and Bruce relationship, but because they're such well-defined and different characters, it feels so fresh. And to see Damian actually show that level of loyalty, that level of friendship, it's a different layer to Damian that we often forget about because he showcases it, and when he does, it's a hoorah moment. And I love that piece is great. And, I saw a shocking vision of your death, and you see Jon, embracing his friend because that friend is still with him. That friend is still alive. And I love that ends up working in that moment where Damian's like, I'll allow it. And it was such a well-written, great moment between the two of them. By the way, Damian's costume now, I really like. I've grown to really like this evolution in his costume. I like that it's not the traditional Robin costume because, to me, especially with Tim Drake coming back into the forefront, I like what they're doing with Tim Drake. Yeah. I like that this is, again, validating Damian as his own entity. And that works for me. Totally works. You do want the distinction between the two. It helps him step out. I hope they keep going in the direction of this costume for Damian because I think it's a good look for him.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I still like the fact that he does have the splash of yellow on the inside of the cape. I love when they did that with Tim, where he had the black cape outside but it had that splash of yellow. And then again, shifting it where he's personalizing it, and he's still a Robin. Yep. Damian is still Robin. And sometimes I think I should give Damian his own code name, but I kind of like the fact that he's still Robin. Yeah. Because Robin is always the sidekick of Batman. Robin is always going to be that Batman, that the person who rolls with Batman. Even though, Damian and Bruce are having their issues right now, he is still Batman's sidekick. He is still loyal to his father in his own way. And I think that is a neat way to make sure everyone knows, yes, he's still a Robin. He's still part of the Bat family. He's still there, not giving him his own name, not giving him his own code name. Nightwing needs that. Nightwing needed to do that. Dick Grayson needed to become Nightwing. I love the fact that he is still Robin. I love the fact that Tim Drake is also, Robin and not Red Robin. He needs, Tim needs to be a Robin as well. Tim is actually, of the two characters, someone I wouldn't have an issue with him 100% giving up the Robin mantle for a different code name, just because his way of saying Damian is the Robin and I'm not. But I don't have an issue with two Robins.
Yeah.
Because each of them have it for the different reasons. Each of them, well, the main reason that they are loyal to the Bat, but also they're holding on to it for their own different purposes. And I think it works for each of them that way. So, again, any sequence with Damian and Jon are always good. This one really was actually, really a neat moment.
It's interesting, this whole Gamora infiltration, where we get to see, Jay's pleading with the scientists, saying, hey, listen, this is our country. This is a dictator right now who is taking it over. This is a chance for you to help in this revolution, this chance to help free us. And I like that the scientists go, destroy Bendix. This is what you got to do. Yeah. And the scientists are like, listen, this is a gamble. You need to do this. If I'm going to do this right now, you need to do this. We see this great attack sequence. We see them doing what they're supposed to do. And there's a reality to what's happening here. It is Jay's mother. And I knew where this was going. I knew it was going to be horrific. Man, that is creepy. That is like a different level. And the evil that is Bendix is like showcasing through her. Because how does the mother recover? Like, can you recover the mother from this?
I don't know. And again, I like using Dreamer in this. Last issue with Dreamer, basically seeing what was going to happen and, sharing that with Jon. And it was kind of neat how they introduced her as she's basically the person who just saved the Justice League in the world with the dreams. And then in this one, she has the dream where she has the premonition where she sees what, Jay's about to go up against and says, Jon, you got to go to him now.
Yeah.
He needs you. And I love just that fact that it was her who had the vision, her who warned, Jon to go there. And just, again, you see it was a great sequence of where you really see Jon flying in there, where he's just bursting through the wall because Jay's in trouble.
Yep.
And that ending panel of the mother in full monster mode, and you're just like, oh man, what is going to happen? What is going to happen here? And absolutely, again, this for me, again, these are great stories playing out. This is a great usage of Jon, great use of these characters. Again, developing these people. Bendix is a great villain to have on into this mix, this whole Gamora storyline. And I love that in the very beginning of this, they've got that spaceship in orbit just in case they need to bail out. So he's already laid out the ground rules for his exit strategy is up in outer space. So I'm like, I love the fact that we're already getting teasers on how, this is a villain who, he's got the strategy. He isn't a complete moron. He knows there's a chance he could lose. So he's got to have his backup plan. So I like seeing that level of intelligence in your villains, because when your villains are super strong, it makes your heroes that much stronger. The fact that they're going up against an army of super-powered creatures and that they can't kill them, they got to incapacitate them, makes your heroes have to rise up even higher. The fact that Jay's about to go one-on-one with his mom is another story of where this is going to go. Jon's going to have to, it's going to be Jon and Jay taking on the mom, and who knows what powers they put into the mom. Obviously, they made her so she could fight Superman, made her so she could fight her son. How are they going to play this out? Where is this going to come from? I'm 100% looking forward to the fight, just because I got to see how they solve it without killing the mom, because they can't kill her. In my heart, there's no way they're killing the mom. But what's going to happen? How is this going to play out? I don't know. Absolutely love this. Tom Taylor is absolutely brilliant.
And this is what is so great about this is if you think about the story that we were experiencing in Action Comics and just now in this last issue that we talked about, Superman Warworld Apocalypse. Such a different kind of story than we're getting over there. And I think that's really important when you've got two Superman books. It's, am I getting a compelling, different kind of story in the other one? And I am. And that's really, really important. I'm finding the Superman family of books very satisfying. And that's important right now for both books to feel valid, to feel relevant, to feel unique and different to each other. I can't wait to see what these creative teams do moving forward with these books with Kal-El returning. And there's so much to be excited about with what's coming now.
Great molecules! They're programming the computers for a chain reaction to blow up that atomic pile!
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address if you prefer to contact us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website. That feeds into our Facebook page. It also feeds into our Twitter page. We also are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community, and that's where our Speeding Bullets segment comes from. So thank you to everybody who posted articles in there over the course of the week. They are part of our team, and really when this podcast is put together, it's Jim and myself and the team over at Facebook that is helping to script the Speeding Bullets segment, really coming up with curating interesting topics for the Speeding Bullets. So thank you to all of you. We really appreciate you and the time that you put into helping to get that segment together. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Seglin, what's going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, remember, DCBS is not just about great deals on comics. They've got statues, apparel, collectibles, and whatnot. We have, right now, I'm looking at the Batman Beyond Red Batarang prop replica, 20% off, only $25.59. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com. Their deals of the week are always a great place to look and catch some books that you might have missed. Batman 89 hardcover, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. Brightest Day Omnibus hardcover, the 2022 edition, $100 regularly, 50% off, only $50. Harley Quinn, the animated series volume 1, the Eat, Bang, Kill Tour, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. The Joker hardcover volume 2, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to be back and talking about the events of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths with issue number 4 and Flashpoint Beyond issue number 5. We'll also announce our new contest, whatever that's going to be. We will see you next week.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
it's right
Jim,
there. Like,
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's up